Hello, welcome to my 2022 reading goals. So if you haven't seen my wrap up for 2021, that will give you a little bit of insight into what I'm planning for 2022, so I'll link that on the screen. But as I've mentioned, I really want a good reading year in 2022. And I know that kind of goes without saying, like everyone wants a good reading year, but I think there are some things I can do, some tweaks I can make to help make this statistically more possible. So let's go with it. First, the only real concrete goal, I mean, there's a few things I'm gonna mention later, but like the biggest concrete goal is that I want to read 52 books. I've had my goal as 52 books for many a year now. Last year I bumped it up to 70 and didn't quite hit 70 because of my reading slump. I think it's nice to just have it be 52. It's always achievable for me. Like I will always read a book a week regardless. So that just feels better. So when looking at my last reading year, a few things besides the slump that happened, I also wasn't quite prioritizing reading in the way that I had in the past, and I think that kind of just led to a spiral of like I wasn't prioritizing it, so I continued to not prioritize it, but I wanted to prioritize it and I was kind of slumpy and whatever. So I don't want to push myself, like that's not what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna refocus it on the goal of reading every day, which I tended to anyway, but reading 15 minutes a day on work days and a half an hour on non-work days, and just making more time for reading in general. I usually always hit the 15 minutes a day because I'm typically always reading before bed, which I'm tweaking that a little bit too as well. But just making it more of a thing that I'm doing instead of doing other things, mainly TikTok. I'm trying to cut down on my TikTok for numerous reasons, mostly having to do with like sleep and then just like feeling good, because being on your phone for that long just does not feel good. I'm gonna talk about that more in my personal goals video too. So if you don't follow my other channel, I'll be talking about personal goals there. It's really fun. I love this time of year for that reason as well. But in cutting down on the TikTok, I want to increase the reading because that's what I would rather spend my time doing, and I just wasn't because I was getting the dopamine hit of the TikTok. So I'm just trying to prioritize reading more than I maybe did in 2021. And I think that I couldn't really prioritize it a ton in 2021 because of the burnout, but I'm trying to do behaviors that are going to help the burnout, and reading I actually think is one of them. So the other thing that I felt like impacted my reading this year was, as much as I do like romance, and I read it mostly because it is kind of mindless for me, I wasn't really enjoying most of what I was reading. It was all just like meh, which then impacted my reading year because then half of the books that I was reading were generally meh. So I'm gonna tweak a little bit of my romance reading here, and this is sort of goal, sort of not, it's just kind of behaviors I'm going to do. But one is I want to read more fantasy. Part of the reason that I switched to romance previously at night was because I was going through a big anxiety flare a couple of years ago, and so it was easier for me to kind of like calm down with a romance book before bed. I don't really feel like I need to do that anymore. So actually the last week or so I've been reading the books that I typically am reading during the day at night, and it's been fine. So I think I'm gonna switch back to that again, and then if I want to read a romance book, read a romance book, but don't read it kind of by default. The other thing that sort of impacted this was, I mentioned this in my 2021 wrap up, I read a lot of books from NetGalley that were romance books because I was just like, it's an easy way to get free romance books, these look cute, whatever. The problem with that was that those books weren't out yet, so no one was recommending them. I just was kind of going off the synopsis, and the thing with romance books, especially right now, they all have the cutesy illustrated covers. It's very hard to tell if you're actually gonna like something because they've made everything be this like super marketable thing, and so it's really hard to actually kind of like find books just going off of like a synopsis and a cover like you used to be able to. So I was reading just a lot of duds. So I want to cut down on that and read more romance that's actually been recommended, which is what I did more in like 2019. I read a lot of romance books that I really loved. But in addition to that, I also want to be a little bit stricter with my DNFs for romance books especially. Like if I'm just kind of feeling and I'm not really liking the couple, I'm not really pulling for them, I'm not getting the characteristic bone ache of like pulling for the couple, I need to put it down. Even if it's like, this is fine, sure, things can be fine. I can also DNF them. So my DNFs aren't really gonna change too much probably for fantasy because I tend to like, there's something that I'm liking about most fantasy books that I read. If it's a romance book, I'm just kind of feeling like, I need to put it down. I want to only really be reading, I mean most books like this, but like really for romance, I'm not doing the world a service by like finishing mediocre romance books. Like a romance reader, if they want to read a romance book, will, regardless of review at this point. You know, like it's a very voracious reading community, so I don't need to be doing that. Where I feel like for fantasy, I like doing a review of even books that I feel like kind of 3-star about because there might be things you like about it and things you didn't like. There's a little bit more range there, and like the world building might be great and maybe the characters not so much or whatever, and so it's still like recommendable. A mid-tier romance book is just like recommendable for the sake of it being just like readable, you know? For me, that's how I kind of view the two genres a little bit differently. They're doing different things, they're aiming for different things. So I want to be a little more strict about that. Go on NetGalley less. Get only things from certain publishers on NetGalley. I tend to like certain publishers' romance. So if I'm gonna read books off of NetGalley, I wanna sort of like stick to those. Mostly because this year I really wanna have a good reading year. If I was being a little more like whatever, I would kind of take some more chances, but I've done that and it hasn't gone particularly well for me. So I'm tightening up the romance this next coming year. Because traditionally speaking, my favorite books of the year do tend to be fantasy and things like that, and I wanna have more time for them. So those are the tweaks to romance that I'm going to make. And I'm interested to see where this is gonna go. I think this year's gonna be a little bit interesting because I'm gonna try to be a little bit more focused with my romance, but in addition to that, I'm not really getting any books from like subscription boxes or anything. I'm still occasionally probably gonna be working with Book of the Month here and there, but I was, you know, having subscription boxes for the last handful of years that were usually bringing a YA book to my attention, and it wouldn't be a book I necessarily heard about, but sometimes I would keep it around and maybe read it just because I already had it. That's not going to be a thing anymore. So I already don't read a lot of YA as it is, but if you got my reading stats, you'll have seen that like 80% of what I read is adult. But I'm just curious to see how much more it's going to skew adult sci-fi and fantasy. I didn't put this down, but I just thought of it when I said sci-fi. I want to read more sci-fi because the sci-fi I read, when I prioritize it, I tend to love because I am so picky about my sci-fi. I really do a lot of vetting of sci-fi before I pick it up because I'm so niche in what I like. Like I tend to like space operas and slice of life sci-fi, not very heavy on the militaristic stuff, whatever, and like I tend to really like what I pick up. So my sci-fi books, even though I tend to read fewer of them, I really enjoy. So I do want to prioritize that slightly more than I may have in the past. In addition to these things, I'm also doing a reading challenge with the Bibliothecary this year. So I'm not going to go into that here because that's a Bibliothecary exclusive thing. But if you didn't see me talking about reading challenges over Vlogmas, I am doing a year-long reading challenge that I created with the Bibliothecary. We're doing it all through Discord, kind of supporting each other throughout the year. I've already posted it. It's like a bingo card kind of thing. So there's 24, I'm pretty sure, maybe there's more. 25, 26. So there's 25 challenges technically, but one row is all like hard mode stuff. And you can kind of do, whether you want to do like a row like a bingo, whether you want to do the whole board, whatever. So you can kind of customize for what you want and how difficult you want it to be. I'm going to try to hit every prompt there. So if you want even more insight to kind of some of the things that I'm targeting, those are all like reading prompts, like a lot of reading challenges like Pop Sugar or Book Riot or whatever. So that's going to be linked down below if you want to join the Bibliothecary and read with us all year, get ideas for book recommendations, things like that. It's a way to kind of like challenge your reading, but I'm definitely going to be doing that as well as part of my reading goals. But for my more concrete goals, as in specific books that I want to read, almost like TBR books, last year I didn't set that many for a goal. I was trying to finish some series, but I did it for the whole year, and that was a little bit of my downfall because in previous years I have done like mid-year goals, and that's always worked much better for me because there's a shorter time span, and my brain, for motivation purposes, needs a shorter time span to be motivated to, like, to do something on any list, not even just reading. Like, this is not a reading thing, it's an everything thing. So I have a mid-year goal of finishing up a couple series. I want to prioritize series again. As a fantasy reader, I'm constantly reading new series, picking them up or whatever, and I just want to like finish some up. Some that I've already talked about, but here's the ones that I want to prioritize for the first half of 2022. The first series is what I've been talking about a lot, so you're probably not going to be shocked. That's the Daevabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. I need to read this whole series in the first half of the year. I've already read City of Brass, but I'm going to reread it because I've forgotten so much of it, and I just feel like this is such like a complex series that like I need to be re-immersed in it, and I'm going to read the rest of them. So really like every other month, if I'm going to read it in the first half of the year, I need to get to these, which will motivate me to read them faster than if I set like a whole year goal. So this I plan to have as just like a wonderful reading experience for the year. I loved City of Brass, so I just want to get re-immersed in it. Everyone's been saying how much they loved this series when I've been saying that like I want to prioritize it, so I'm very much looking forward to getting to this. Then I want to finish up this duology, which is the All the Stars and Teeth. that was the first book. The second book here is All the Tides of Fate. This is by Adeline Grace. This is a YA fantasy series. The main character has sort of like soul magic, and it's in a world that like every island sort of has different types of magic, and she's discovering things about like her people and like the way that they've been ruled and everything else. And I really dug the first book. I read that back in 2020 and then just haven't continued, but I have the second one. I just want to wrap it up. I can do a little recap and then read this last one. I just really kind of dig it. It has like a little sort of privateer pirate character. Like, it was a pretty solid YA fantasy series. And the last series that, again, I'm prioritizing, there's gonna be more than this, but these are the ones that I want to like for sure get done in the first half of 2022. A lot of you have been asking me about it, is The Bronzed Beasts by Roshni Chokshi. This is the final book in the Gilded Wolves series. So I got this for Christmas. I can now finish out the series. I want to prioritize this in early 2022 and get a like series review out for you guys and see how it all wraps up. Very hopeful. So yeah, those are all of my goals for 2022. Again, they're more behavioral goals than like TBRs and things, because there's so many books on my to be read shelf. I'm looking at it right now. Like, I could pick up anything and be happy that I'm reading it. So it's really hard to prioritize books because things will sort of like ebb and flow. But these are the things that I'm like most excited about right now as far as some of these series. Like I said, David Bottom, I'm convinced all of them will be 5 stars. So I'm really looking forward to that. Like I said, I'm doing the Bibliothecary reading challenge, but we also are doing seasonal read-alongs of books that they vote on. So I'll be reading those books as well the first half of the year. There's gonna be 2 of those in the seasonal read-along. So if you want to read along to participate in as well, we do that on Discord. It's a very active community. So if you are wanting to get more motivation for 2022, definitely join us there. But comment below and let me know your 2022 reading goals. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.